the environmental movement, our Organic Act finally came. The Federal Land Policy and Management Act, or FLPMA, was passed on the eve of President Carter's election in 1976.
With the passage of FLPMA, we clearly had not only the authority to take action, but an absolute accountability and responsibility to take those actions that were laid out for us in a balanced means.
A new land use planning system was designed to implement the mandates of FLPMA. The Resource Management Plan, or RMP, melded planning with the environmental requirements of NEPA into a single decision-making process. Full public participation was provided throughout the process, and internally, tunnel vision single resource planning was replaced with an interdisciplinary teamwork approach to issues and problem solving.
America is starting to realize that we've been on a binge. We haven't recognized some of the things we should have, particularly where the resources are concerned.
I thought it was too bad that we, in fact, almost a crime that we ended up being sued, so forth. We were at a stage where we could have pushed that range program ahead by leaps and bounds, and then we get sued, and I think we got set back 30 or 40 years in bringing that soil vegetation resource up to its full potential.
I saw a great development of expertise in the Bureau then, the late 60s and the early 70s, from the standpoint of bringing in a lot of exotic skills. So we got the economists, we even had psychologists, and we began to interface with the public, I think, a lot better than we had before.
1969, the bulk of our people were either foresters, range managers, wildlife biologists, or realty specialists, plus the support activities in fire, cadastral, administration, and so forth. By 1976, we had picked up, based on my head count at the Cauldron that year, we had 56 skills represented down there. We had every ologist that's known to man almost on the rolls in BLM.
Among the provisions in FLPMA were those for wilderness inventory and recommendations to Congress. A controversial program from the start, wilderness inventory was operated largely by new hires under headquarters program direction. Many line managers felt that management direction was not properly utilized to temper the program.
Put yourself in the shoes of the rancher or the miner out there, and the word wilderness will strike the fear of God in your heart. We have the re-adjudication of the vegetation as a result of the EIS. We have the wilderness situation. We have all of the new skills coming on board, and they're all out there working their thing out on the public lands. And by the time that Ronald Reagan come into office, then there was a tremendous groundswell coming out of the West that says things are out here on the public lands are going to hell in a handbasket, and we want it stopped, and we're going to rebel.
Soon after the passage of FLPMA, ranchers, fearful of the Bureau of Land Management's new mandate to retain and administer the public lands for multiple resource purposes, turned to the idea of selling the public lands to private individuals or turning the lands over to the states. Starting in Nevada, the movement spread across the West. It became known as the Sagebrush Rebellion. NEPA triggered off the NRDC suit that led to the round of environmental impact statements, which in turn forced a re-adjudication of the range. This brought forth a violent reaction from the ranchers and their support groups.
Well, the Sagebrush Rebellion, as I know it, is simply a concern from the using public, and especially the livestock industry, with having to accept bureaucratic mandates on public land that they use as a part of their operations. And they being a very independent sort of people, prefer not to have to answer to anyone with regard to their management decisions. Simply put, they would prefer to own that land, and it was an initiative that was designed to, first of all, to acquire those lands for private ownership. That didn't wash simply because of the immense capital requirements that were involved, and then it was modified to mean instead a conveyance of these federal land estates to the states.
Congress had no intention of relinquishing federal ownership of the public lands. The administration, however, saw the public lands as an asset that could be possibly used to help balance the national debt. The policy became known as the Asset Management Program. The Asset Management Program met with much resistance from other user groups and environmentalists. The administration then turned their thoughts to the idea of land ownership adjustment, with the idea of repositioning federal lands to enhance public resource values.
One of the positions of most people that are involved in land and resource management is that these things are a national treasure that dollars cannot be put on, and that as time goes on, more and more resource values and ultimately values to the public will emanate from this land resource.
Land tenure adjustment, or repositioning, has become an important multiple-use management tool. Before we invest in our future, first we must secure title to our nation's treasure house. We must position ourselves in the lands which best can serve the long-term benefits of the American people. Some lands can be developed to their highest and best use in private ownership, state ownership, or under other government agencies. Other lands should be retained in public ownership for multiple use.
Well, the idea is essentially that the public lands, before investment can be made in them, need to be protected so that they cannot be taken for purposes that would be inconsistent with the investment that's out there.
In the early 80s, BLM's mineral responsibilities were strengthened. Onshore inspection and enforcement came from the U.S. Geological Survey. Mineral classification and appraisal functions also were added.
But we're beginning to realize now that this is it. A nation that doesn't take care of its resources adequately no longer maintains its position worldwide. Someone has to pay the piper, and now we're ready to do that. But that means that you're going to have some skilled, dedicated people to step in and start moving this thing, getting that train back on the track. And resources can't be ignored. That's everyone's right, not only our right, but our kids' rights and their kids. And it's not going to be settled politically. It's going to be settled by wise management on the ground level.
Multiple-use lands need to be secured and consolidated for efficiency and for conservation in the truest sense, management for the long-term good of the American public.
As you can see, the Bureau of Land Management has a unique challenge. We have responsibilities for the remnants of the once vast public domain, a treasure trove of resources that must be managed for this generation and generations to follow.